Today on the Tristen Law Show, you're going to hear how a man and his camera went from the construction field to the soccer field, and then to ringside at your favorite pro wrestling events. His name is Earl Gardner, and that's today on the Tristen Law Show. Welcome to the Tristen Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. If it's your first time here, new episodes drop Wednesdays, and welcome. I'm Tristen Law, and I don't know how to count. At times I question my reading skills because if you listen to the previous episode with Becca Scott, which I suggest you listen to, I noted it was episode 25, but in reality, it was episode 24. That figure does not include the bonus episodes, which there are two, and I suggest that you listen to them if you have not, but it was a clerical error in production, basic math, and reading. And now that that's out the way, welcome to the real episode 25 of the Tristen Law Show. And I'm glad that you're here because a key figure here is you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I have a really cool episode coming out right before WrestleMania, but since you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy the Tristen Law Show, I am catering that episode for pro wrestling fans and non-pro wrestling fans alike. We're covering the top 5 WrestleManias from 2010 to 2020. That's a lot of WrestleManias to watch. And it's all for the episode. More on that in the coming weeks. A few weeks ago, I saw someone on Twitter putting over a photographer on Twitter. And you can follow me at The Real Big Tris on Twitter and Instagram, and follow the show, Tristen Law Show, at Tristen Show on both Instagram and Twitter. So I started Googling this photographer, and I saw some of the cool things he did, and I knew he'd be a personality that you would want to meet. His name is Earl Gardner, and we talk about how he got into photography. We talk about how he got ringside with his camera and what makes a great photo, and how you too can possibly stick your toe into the pool of photography. Okay, there's no swimming pool of photography, but you can still learn how to be a photographer. By the way, quick birthday shout out to Colossal Mike Law, my kayfabe cousin from episode 19. I hope you had a colossal birthday, my friend. When I get back, I'll be here with Earl Gardner. I am Tristen Law, and this is the Tristen Law Show.
Hello to all of you Tristen Law Show podcast listeners. This is Frank Mandolini. You may not recognize this voice. I am the Italian podcaster who talks about the business side of wrestling. Yeah, I know, it's quite niche. But if you look for last minute wrestling podcast on all of your social media and wherever you get your podcast, you've been amazed to find interviews with people such as Rob Van Dam or Matthew Gregg from Botchamania and many others, so you get to know many aspects of the wrestling business that normally you don't hear in wrestling podcasts. Because let's face it, who wants to hear another guy talk about Monday Night Raw? Yeah, me neither. So guys, go to lmwpodcast.com or search for LMW Podcast everywhere in the interweb. And remember guys, this is Frank Mandolini from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, and you stay safe.
Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, everybody. I hope you're having a great time. My next guest is a photographer who's captured moments at H2O, GCW, ICW, and CZW. Wow, that's a lot of W's. Not only is he a photographer, but he's the author of Earl's Eye View Volume 1 and 2, The Collective, which captures moments from the Collective Pro Wrestling event. At this time, I'd like to welcome Earl Gardner to the Tristen Law Show. Earl, welcome. How are you, man?
Doing good. Thank you for having me, Tristen.
Hey, you know what? I'm so glad that you're here. You know, I told you before, I saw somebody putting you over on Twitter, and I started doing some Googling on you, and I was like, wow, this guy is really interesting. But I do want to let everybody know, if they're going to Google you, they have to put photographer, because there's somebody else running around using your name. You might want to copyright that.
Well, the guy who wrote the Perry Mason's book, his name is Earl Stanley Gardner. I think there's a jazz pianist named Earl Gardner. There's a bunch of Earl Gardners out there.
Well, you know what? You are the Earl Gardner that we have today on the Tristen Law Show, is a photographer, and you're here. And Earl, it's a pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Likewise.
So, Earl, I dabbled a bit in photography about 5 years ago. I was self-taught by buying a book and a camera. How did you get started in photography?
I guess when I got serious about it, I happened to stumble into my current shoot job almost 25 years ago. And while I was into photography as a kid, I never really, other than screwing around with your family camera, never got serious or really learned anything about it. But when I got my shoot job with the company that I work for now, we do construction documentation. So if you're demoing or building something near other structures, we'll go document the conditions of the existing building. So when after the job's done and someone says you broke my foundation or you cracked my window, there's a record of what everything looked like. So while all of that is real simple, mindless photography, because you're just blanketing facades of buildings with pictures, one of the cool things is we worked on explosive demolition projects. So if you've ever seen any of those Discovery or Learning Channel shows where they're doing explosive demolition, then you've seen footage I've shot. We basically have the largest archive of explosive demolition footage in the world. So that, doing the explosive demolition side, we would typically have a half a dozen video cameras and then a couple still cameras out. So that's when I started to take the deep dive in on photography. Because my boss, being super cool, would just let me use the equipment. If it wasn't being used on a job, I could use it for whatever I wanted. So, and back then, I was really into the jam band scene, and I really started, I was shooting film back then. It was like a Nikon F3 I was using back then. But I'd be shooting concerts and stuff like that. That's where I kind of started at. And then from there, doing concerts for about 10 years, still while doing my regular job. I did pro soccer photography for about 10 years. And then I basically retired from the soccer photography last year, and my primary focus, while the wrestling photography overlapped with the soccer stuff, my primary focus has been, wrestling for the last 2 or 3 years now.
That's really cool. I watch a lot of, those educational stations, TV shows, and I didn't know that, that your company is the one that owns most of the photography. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we for a while, it slowed down a lot, but for a while, I was flying out 2 to 3 times a month all over North America and Europe to document jobs. A lot of that has slowed down because a lot of the work was public housing. So, once that's gone, that kind of work dries up a little bit, but
right.
Yeah, it slowed down a bit now, but it was definitely great because it kind of really taught me how to use a camera and how to create an exposure and that sort of thing.
So did you ever have any formal experience in photography? Because the way I learned was not to be, and it's going to sound really crazy, I went to YouTube and I bought a book from Sam's Club.
There's nothing wrong with that. I've never had any formal training. I basically, for me, the way I kind of work is when I come up to a wall that I can't figure out, okay, how do I accomplish this? I don't know how to do it. I do exactly what you said. I get a book or I go to YouTube. YouTube is one of the greatest educational resources you could use. From everything from learning how to use a camera to I use it to fix stuff. Like I had to fix my pool filter pump. Go to YouTube. They teach you how to do it. It's such a great resource for learning how to do just about anything.
So, Earl, how do you recommend somebody get into photography?
Well, I wouldn't get into wrestling photography until you have a photography background. Like it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to shoot and to shoot well. You're dealing with, a lot of times you're not using a flash. You're dealing with horrible lighting conditions. It's really challenging and can be challenging to freeze motion in these low light conditions. So, I mean, I think the best thing to do is just find, I know most places have a camera studio nearby or a camera shop or even camera clubs. I know there's a local one around me. I'm in South Jersey. There's one about 10 minutes from my house. I would recommend taking a class first, because you will learn the basics a lot quicker, which will then allow you to advance a lot faster. While I do think trial and error is good because you'll learn from your mistakes and you will never forget them, it'll just go a lot faster, I think, if you have a class and a teacher. 'Cause I feel like there's gaps in my knowledge because I never necessarily had a formal education, because there's things that I don't know because I haven't had to use those things yet. And sometimes I think that I do would like to take a class just to fill in some of these gaps I think I have.
It was funny, Earl, because one of the conversations I was having with a friend earlier today, I said to him, hey, do you feel that there are a lot of people in the world that are smart that went to college, or a lot of people that are smart that didn't go to college? And we both agreed on the second one, that there are a lot of people that are smart that didn't go to college. Because just like you, I'm not saying that you didn't go to college or not, but I'm just saying that when it comes to photography, you were self-taught. You never sat in a place to learn that. And just like podcasting, I've never sat in a place and had anybody teach me. And just like you said, I'm YouTube trained on everything. And if I feel that I come to a roadblock, I'm like, how do I accomplish this? I am 100% sure that somebody else has had this problem before, and you can YouTube it and your problem be solved in like 20 minutes. You'll never forget how to do it again.
No, I agree with you 100%. It's at the tip of your fingers. You're never without, everybody has their phone. You can tap into that database, that wealth of knowledge in a heartbeat.
So how do you recommend somebody get into photography in general? Just a club?
Well, a class or a club. You should really learn how to create an exposure, whether you want depth of field, whether you want to freeze motion. That's kind of a very fundamental thing. And I think once you grasp that and you learn how to use your actual camera, because there's a lot of people out there that just put it on automatic mode and they're like, well, you're never going to get your best photo on an automatic mode.
Agreed.
Because the camera's guessing and the camera's dumb. You'll always be able to, I run whenever I shoot, I'm in full manual. I choose all the settings that are going for whatever situation I'm in. But yeah, I think even just a beginner's class, just to learn the camera, learn an exposure, and then just to take photos of stuff and have some experience, that'll make your life infinitely easier. But when it comes to actually getting into shooting wrestling, bring your camera to shows. There's, obviously with COVID right now, that can be a difficult thing, but in a perfect world where shows are running, I used to just go to them as a fan, not necessarily looking to shoot ringside eventually, but I'd always bring my camera. But there's also, there's also so many, you have varying levels of companies, and so many areas have their very local indie show that's just local workers and stuff. Like even getting into there and practicing there and doing that, that's a fairly entry level promotion. And once you kind of get experience, you get experience around the ring where you're not getting in the way. You're learning how to work with production, because you're not the most important person out there.
Right.
You need to be aware of, like, okay, I can't get in front of the video crew, because typically a live broadcast is more important than any photo that I'm ever taking.
Right.
So, there's a lot of things to learn, how to behave in the locker room, just, there's a lot to learn. I mean, I think, doing it for your little local hometown promotion or something like that is going to get your foot in the door, because then once you get more experience, people see your photos, you'll grow from there. I mean, because everybody's working somewhere else too. Someone will recommend you, someone will bring you along, just don't expect it to happen overnight. It's a process, and you have to be patient. And I'm sure even right now, with the way things are, it's even more difficult to get a foot in the door.
I agree. So you said in the beginning, you not only photograph pro wrestling, but you photograph other live sports too. How does one get to attend their favorite sporting events, but also get to photograph those events?
For me, I started shooting pro soccer. Philadelphia, I live in the Philadelphia suburbs in South Jersey. And back in 2010, Philadelphia got an MLS team, an expansion team. So I had season tickets with my wife and some friends. And again, it was one of those things where they didn't care if you brought a camera as long as it met certain restrictions. You're not bringing in some 12-inch lens and stuff like that,
right.
So I would bring my camera to shows. I'd post our shows to matches and post them online, and go to different events that I could bring my camera, and people would take notice. I'd tag players in them and whatnot. Then I went to like a player announcement press conference once at a pub in Philadelphia where they were introducing 2 new signings. And I happened to meet the editor of a Philadelphia soccer blog. And we hit it off and we talked, and he had seen some of my photos previously because of his involvement with the team and on social media, that I ended up joining their blog. And so what I did that first season was just kind of do all the reserve matches, which is like their B squad games and stuff, and anything that wasn't already assigned. That sometimes random games, friendlies pop up during a season. And then once I started doing that, I just got put right into the rotation the following year. We had a crew of 3 photographers, and we would basically rotate, every third game, we'd shoot a game. Which was fine with me, because being a fan, I also like to tailgate and be in the stands with my wife and enjoy the game too. So it was kind of a nice balance. But that afforded me a lot of great opportunities, because one of the things they do is international teams' schedules are kind of opposite of the American schedule, where they have the summer off, where ours play through the summer. So what European teams and some South American teams would do is come in and play us on a friendly match, just like an exhibition match.
Right.
So, I was lucky enough to photograph Cristiano Ronaldo in Real Madrid, and a whole bunch of European teams, and then also some international teams, did some international tournaments, because fortunately Philly's a great area because we've got the facilities. It's they ran whenever they have tournaments, it's kind of one of the cities they also pick. We've had a lot of tournaments here too. So how I got there, it was luck. I met the right person, hooked up with the right site, and that just kind of snowballed into 10 years of shooting pro soccer.
I did see some of your photos for soccer on Tumblr. If somebody's looking, just type in Earl Gardner Tumblr, and I was able to look at those photos, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And looking through all of your photos, because not only do you have photos of soccer on your Tumblr, you have photos of wrestling and some music as well too. but what makes a good pitcher stand out from the average pitcher, in your opinion?
Emotion. I think pictures with emotion stand out. That's usually what catches me, something that I haven't seen before, or a photograph that I don't think I necessarily would have saw myself. Like, I wouldn't have had the vision to necessarily see what they saw when they took that photograph.
So how did you get into taking pictures at pro wrestling events? Was it another right place, right time situation?
It was, I would bring my camera to shows because most places will let you bring them. And that's how I got noticed, because people started to see my photos, and eventually someone reached out to me and was like, yo, do you want to come shoot for us?
Right.
Living in the Philadelphia area, there's so many wrestling shows. Before COVID, within 50 miles of where I live, I could probably go to 2 to 3 shows every weekend. I mean, that's how much there is around here, from, when ROH and MLW would come to town occasionally, to House of Hardcore, to GCW, H2O, ICW, CZW. But then you have all the even smaller promotions around here that ran too. So I went to a lot of wrestling shows. I don't have kids, so I'm fortunate enough that I have a lot of flexibility to go do stuff. And I'd post them online, and eventually one day, do you know John Carlo, who did all the vignettes and stuff? And then he now works for WWE.
I was going to say, that name sounds super familiar.
He did all the CZW vignettes with like Joey Janela back in the day, and then from there did all the GCW vignettes. But he ended up he now works for WWE doing videos and stuff. But when he worked for CZW, he reached out to me and was like, hey, you want to shoot on the other side of the rail? And I was just like, at that time, I was looking to get into it on the other side. I wanted to work in the business. So he reached out to me and he's like, hey, first show we're going to shoot is going to be Cage of Death. My first ringside show ever was Cage of Death, which was just being baptized by fire. And it was awesome. I mean, it was an absolutely awesome experience. But his phone call to me, him reaching out to me is the whole reason I got in. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I'm sure I would have gotten there eventually, but if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been doing it at that time.
Well, shout out to him. And for everybody listening that doesn't know what Cage of Death is, it's CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling. It's their biggest show, and it's been around since 1999. And it's a steel cage match that has weapons, electrified cage walls, tables, light tubes, pretty much everything except the kitchen sink. I don't think I've ever seen a kitchen sink in one of those matches.
You never know. I mean, you go back pretty far. I wouldn't be surprised.
While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristen Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick timeout to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. But with CZW being known as the place where someone always finds a way to bleed, have you ever gotten blood on your camera?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Usually, if I do, it's usually on the front of the glass. But I keep a glass filter on the front, so that way stuff is flying. If you bang it, it just puts an extra layer of protection on the front of your lens. So I remember when I first started shooting, I was cleaning my equipment after a match in the kitchen, and like I'm cleaning the lens off with an alcohol rub or whatever, and my wife's like, what's all that shit on your lens? And I'm like, oh, that's blood, honey. And she works in healthcare, and she was just like, what the fuck? It happens, but, it is what it is.
Hey, it's a part of the job. Earl,
yeah.
you can't go to SeaWorld and sit in the splash zone and not expect to get wet. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens. I mean, it doesn't happen often. And as a matter of fact, it's probably only happened 2 or 3 times that I've actually had blood on the end of my lens.
So if you could photograph one wrestling event, which wrestling event would it be?
I mean, if I was going to pick anything, I would probably, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking like, I mean, Wrestle Kingdom would be pretty badass. Or even just a show in Kurikan Hall. I mean, because those shows actually have photographers ringside, whereas like WrestleMania, WrestleMania is not like there's press photographers down there or anything like that.
Right.
But I think Wrestle Kingdom would be pretty badass.
That wouldn't be a bad idea. You also get to go to Japan as well too. So hey,
that's the other thing. I was like, if we're gonna do this, let's go overseas.
That's one of the things that I always tell people, Earl, at the wrestling school. I said, hey, if you get signed by WWE to be a referee, it's not a bad deal because you still get to travel the world on somebody else's dime. So why the heck not? Go to Wrestle Kingdom in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, you probably as far less of a toll on your body too, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
A referee versus a wrestler.
Sure is.
There's no shame in being.
I know I'm too tall to be a. I know I'm too tall.
What's that?
I know I'm too tall to be a referee, so I'll never get that opportunity. What's your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
Early 80s. I would have to say 1983, 1984 WWF. There was no such thing as cable where I lived. So we only had like the 5 channels over the air, and that would be on TV Saturday. Tito Santana was probably my favorite at that point. And this was before, like right before or right as like Hulkamania is getting ready to like explode. So it was pre-Hulkamania, pre-WrestleMania for one, but it was like right at the beginning of that.
So did you ever for a second think that you wanted to be a pro wrestler, or was that like the furthest thing from your mind?
Never, ever once did the thought, as much as I loved wrestling, because when I was that age, 83, I would have been 9 or 10. Never once did I ever think did I want to do it. I loved it and I was obsessed with it. And, 2 years later, around 85, when it exploded, I mean, I would watch about 24 hours of wrestling a week. There was that much programming. It went from having 2 hours on the TV to about 24 hours in about 2 years when it exploded. And even watching all that wrestling as a kid, never once did I think, like, I wanted to do that.
Well, you're a smart man, I can tell you that. So growing up in the 80s, and I'm sure that you were probably, a college student during the Attitude Era, right?
I would have been, I probably was around 20, 21, 22. So yeah, I didn't last in college long, but yeah, I would have been right around that time.
It's all right. A lot of us didn't last in college long, trust me. And look how we turned out. So doing all that time in the 80s, Attitude Era, even today, what fascinates you most about pro wrestling?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it just goes back to a kid. It was something that I loved as a kid. WWF was what introduced me. But then, like, when our local syndicated stations started playing NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, I remember the first show that they aired was a cage match with Magnum TA and Wahoo McDaniel for, like, either the U.S. or the national title. I forget which one. And, like, 10, 11-year-old me seeing this NWA cage match on television for a title was like, what? And that's probably the most significant match to my fandom, because once I saw that, and I'd been reading about these guys in the magazines, but I never saw them on TV. But once I saw that match, like the hooks were in, and I was just a fan of it. I enjoyed it. Like for me, it's not necessary. I like the promos, because I love Dusty Rhodes. Jim Crockett was like I love that. That was my biggest like favorite promotion growing up, which was like just really heavy on promos and interviews. And, Dusty Rhodes just was probably my favorite of them all. And I think the stories and the promos are probably like my favorite part.
So you've seen pro wrestling change a lot over the past 30 years. If you could change one thing in pro wrestling today, what would it be?
Lighting in venues. Better lighting in venues of indie shows. That would be the one thing I would probably change the most. As for the actual wrestling itself, sometimes I think there needs to be more selling. And for me as a photographer that likes to capture emotion, I've been doing it long enough that I know like there's certain wrestlers that I can always count on for that facial expression. Like, and I can count on it all throughout their match. And then there's some other wrestlers that, tend to just kind of have, not much of an expression on their faces when they do stuff. So, right. More selling equals better photos for me, in my opinion.
So let's take a moment to talk about Earl's Eye. Earl's Eye is a collection of pro wrestling photos, but I'm going to allow you to explain in more detail, what is Earl's Eye?
It's actually Earl's Eye View.
Earl's Eye View, I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. So I've always over the years wanted to create something tangible with my photos. Anymore with the digital world now, barely anybody prints photos out anymore. Nothing is tangible anymore. So 2 years, I guess it was 2 years ago, the first collective in Jersey City, I'm one of the main photographers. Me and Chris Grasso are basically the main photographers for GCW. The collective was coming to Jersey City, and me being the insane person that I am, I was just like, I told Brett at GCW, hey, I'm going to shoot the whole thing. And he's like, you sure? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, I love the challenge. I just want to document the whole thing. And so from there, that ended up to me being the perfect subject to create something tangible, to create a photo book. So I basically took inspiration from the old Wrestling Eye magazines and designed my logo, which is on the front of the magazines, and then just basically created a book to just document the whole, I think it was 11 shows that happened in Jersey City in April of 2019. So put that out about a year ago, and had some pretty decent success with it, and just recently put out my second copy.
I know I saw that on bigcartel.com, and I'm going to post a link in the description of this episode so people can go ahead and check it out and buy it. It's not expensive at all. It's only $25, and it makes a great, centerpiece for your dining room table, or, just something nice to look at to show people when they come to your house.
Yeah, it's great if you're an independent wrestling fan.
Explain to us what the collective wrestling event is.
During WrestleMania week every year, it's basically the largest party for independent wrestling. WrestleMania picks a town. Every promotion all over the U.S. and some international come to town, and you can have upwards of about 30 to 50 wrestling shows happening within a week's time. It's really the Super Bowl trip for your wrestling fan. It is, you can go there and OD on wrestling for a week if you want. So as part of that, GCW came up with the idea of the collective. They rented out White Eagle Hall in Jersey City and basically booked 4 shows, and then 3 shows. So they had 11 shows total over the course of 3 days. So they basically put in the infrastructure for other companies to come in and run on top of themselves running a couple shows as well. So like the first year you had Chikara, Black Label Pro, Blackcraft, GCW ran 2 spring break show, Bloodsport happened, Orange Cassidy's show, AIW, IWS, Independent Wrestling TV, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. But yeah, so all these different promotions ran shows, 11 shows total over 3 days. They did it again this year. It was supposed to be Tampa. So they were supposed to do it in Tampa. COVID hit. That got canceled. They ended up running this year's in Indianapolis at the beginning of October. Then this year they actually ran 4 shows a day. So they had 12 shows total this year. And again, I did the whole... Well, actually, I skipped 1 show just because I was exhausted.
I could imagine.
I made 11 out of the 12 shows at this collective.
I'm sure by the end of that event, somebody just has wrestling burnout. Because that's what happened to me. Because, even though I'm a wrestler, I still tell people, hey, I'm a fan. And when WrestleMania was in our area in 2019, I went to a lot of the events, a lot of the WWE events. And even by Monday, I was like, dude, I'm just like, tired of wrestling. Like I need a break. I need a vacation from wrestling. So I can get why you missed that 1 show.
It was day 2. It was the midnight show on day 2. And it was like, I can either go to the room and get some sleep and be completely refreshed for the next 4 shows next day. Or it was like, or I could stay up, get like 3 hours of sleep and have a horrible day tomorrow, and I chose sleep.
It's all right. Hey, let me tell you that WrestleMania, I call it WrestleMania hangover, and it's rough.
Mm-hmm.
Earl, I've watched an unboxing on YouTube of Earl's Eye View, Volume 1 on YouTube, and looking at the pictures they showed and looking at some of your work online, how do you manage to be in the right place at the right time?
I find a lot of professional wrestling is, there's only so many places you can be. So you're really limited mostly to the corners. You don't really want to be in the middle of the ring because you usually have 2, video crews roaming on each, 2 sides of the ring. You don't want to get in their way so they can't move back and forth. So you tend to stick to the corners. And you do it enough, you tend to know when certain things are going to happen. Or sometimes, if there's some crazy spot that is going to happen, I do encourage the guys to give me a heads up.
Fair.
So that way I can maybe think about, okay, how do I want to approach this? Is there anything I need to do differently for it? Especially if it's an out of the ring thing, and making sure I can have enough light for it. It's really just, and paying attention, just knowing what's going to happen and planning for it and just being there and paying attention.
So you photographed everybody that's pretty much somebody in the WWE and AEW. You've photographed some big names on the indies. So who is your favorite person to photograph and why?
There's a couple of guys recently that I've shot. And they just make your job easy because you don't even have to direct them. They know what they're doing. They just have poses for you, and they're great. Is Trey Lamar. He's super easy to shoot. And recently I shot Treehouse Lee. And his look is outstanding. It's different. And he knows how to work the camera and pose. So, those guys are just, it's so easy to get great images with them.
So what are your goals as it pertains to pro wrestling and photography?
I want to put out 2 more books. I'm already I've already pulled the photos for my next book, and I'm hoping to start laying it out by this weekend. It's going to be a book on Matt Tremont.
Oh, wow. From
Yeah.
H2O.
Yeah. And he retired recently, and I've been shooting him for the last 4 years. He's local to me. I mean, H2O is my home promotion. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I want to do a second book later this year. I'm not 100% what the topic is going to be. I always have different subjects I want to do. It's just a matter of making sure I have the material and figure out how I want to present it. I've got a new venture I'm working on. I can't really talk about much yet. I'm hoping to drop that in the next 2 weeks or so. Hopefully by the middle of February at the latest. Like, I've got a new kind of business idea that's wrestling related, that's going to come out soon. I just really want to get better at doing promo photography. That's probably my biggest goal, because like doing ringside stuff, doing sports, I've been doing that forever. I feel really confident with that. It's doing the studio stuff, the promo shots, that is something that, I mean, I've only been doing that for like 2 years. And again, I'm teaching myself. So right. It's a little bit slow going, I feel, on my end, but that's where I want to really step things up this year. I don't like repeating myself a lot. So with that, it's like, you're like, okay, I need a new look. When you pick out a new look, it's like, okay, well, this is going to be lit differently. So you're learning how to light a different situation. So that's kind of my goal for this year, is really my new venture that I'm coming out with, hopefully 2 more books, and just getting better at the studio end of things.
Do you have an aspiration to take photos for the WWE or AEW?
I mean, if an opportunity arose, would I turn it down? Probably not. I mean, it would depend what it was. Obviously, I don't think I would ever take a full-time job with like WWE doing that. I've been at my job for 25 years now, and I'm hoping to retire at that job.
Oh, fair enough.
And I'm at an age where, like, to do the WWE thing and go back to traveling and stuff like that is not something that I'm really like too keen on. But like one-off things, if the opportunity came, if they ended up liking what I was doing to the point where like I could come in and do something special for whatever project or something like that, I think that would be cool. But I really love kind of working on the independent level. I like the intimacy of it. I love the people I work with. I also like with Matt and H2O, he has a school.
Yep.
He runs student shows. He has his pay your dues shows. He's developing talent in kids. And one of the things I love is working with the kids and giving them new promos and helping them and watching and seeing them grow. While I would never turn down an opportunity to maybe do a project with either of those companies, I really do love the independent level of things.
You see, coming into this, I was thinking, if I was like, man, would I ever want to work WWE or AEW or something big like that? And I was like, heck yeah, I would. But your answer that you gave me was obviously not what I was expecting, but I 100% understand why. Obviously, look, don't give up the retirement job. But you never know who you're taking a photo of, who in 2, 5, 10, 15 years, they could be somebody, and you can have that first pick of them. That's pretty cool that you're out here in the indies.
I do like that. And there's been a lot of times, I mean, I haven't shot, there's a bunch of guys I have shot in WWE, not a lot. It's mostly people that have just gone in the last couple of years. But it's not uncommon for me to shoot someone's last show before they show up on TV a couple nights later. I want to say that happened with Riddle, maybe Shotzi Blackheart, or I shot her last indie show, I want to say. I think that was in Philly for GCW. I think that was. I'm not 100% sure. But it's cool. And I love that. I love to see that. Like, I love to see people grow and succeed. So it's kind of a cool place to be.
So I'm not trying to put you into a competition with other photographers, Earl, but if I was an indie company and I was looking for a photographer to shoot my show, why would I choose Earl Gardner over the rest?
I'll work my ass off for you. As anyone who's been at either of the collectives have seen, I'll work my ass off. And I'm a team player. I kind of think I really understand my position and where it relates to everything else that's going on, and I'm not afraid to help out. It's kind of really in my nature to be a helper, and I know how to behave.
And you also got you got a pretty decent social media following, so I'm sure that you taking those pictures and posting them on your social media is publicity for those companies, big and small.
I'd hope so.
Well, Earl, what's next for you and your camera?
GCW 24-hour Fight Forever show, where they're doing a 24-hour long wrestling show that I'm going to try my darndest to shoot all of, or at least some, I won't be shooting ringside for 24 hours straight. It's going to be a mix of ringside and doing promos and stuff like that. But my plan is to be there for the 24 hours and hopefully raise some money for all the wrestlers who are not working right now. It's a charity event where they're getting a lot of sponsors, and then there's going to be, I believe it's going to be broadcast for free on YouTube or some kind of accessible platform that people can then donate to, and everything is going to the wrestlers.
That is 200% cool that you're going to be a part of that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm really excited for it.
Very good. Hey, well, Earl, I do want to thank you for hanging out with me today on the Tristen Law Show. Tell everyone how they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Earl W. Gardner. I have my Big Cartel store where you can get my 2 different books. Plus, I have a limited edition autograph Effie print up there. And that is at earlgardner.bigcartel.com. If you go to earlgardnerphotography.com, that'll just take you to my Facebook page that has folders and folders and folders and folders.
Hey, well, Earl, I appreciate the time that you gave here with me today, and I look forward to seeing you on the road. Hey, maybe one day you could photograph me while I'm in the ring.
There you go. Sounds good to me.
Hey, well, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for having fun, Tristen.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks, Earl. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere, because when I get back, we'll talk about this interview, and I will tell you who'll be here next week on the Tristen Law Show. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristenLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt? Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristenLawShow.com. Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, and I hope that you're having a great time. We're looking to promote your band or brand here on the Tristen Law Show, and all you got to do is contact the Tristen Law Show at TristenLawShow.com or TristenLawShow@gmail.com for more info. Man, speaking with Earl was really cool. No, it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool. It was super duper cool. That's not a word. I made it up. But what did you think? Sound off on social media and tell me what you think of Earl. You already know that I've never met Earl in person, but I suggest you take a moment, just like I did before I put him on this episode. Check out his work, Google him, and check out the links in the description of this episode. You see, for me, I've never really talked to anybody about my background in photography, but photography is how I ended up here as the host of the Tristen Law Show. There are so many roads that ended up here to the Tristen Law Show. And Earl, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you. Next week, I'm going to introduce you to up-and-coming wrestler Corey Cooper. Man, he's another pro wrestler who I ran into on Twitter. We have a really fun chat about how he got into pro wrestling, his aspirations, and so much more. He represents Long Island, New York, and you don't want to miss it. If you like this episode, I need a favor from you. Yes, I am talking to you. Share this on your favorite social media platform and don't forget to tag myself for the show. Don't make this be the thing that you do. Let's make this be the thing that we do. You can also walk up to a random stranger and tell them to listen to the Tristen Law Show. Yeah, they may think you're crazy, but who really cares what other people think, right? Fine, if you're worried about being judged, go on over to TristenLawShow.com and at least buy a shirt. People will think that you're really, really cool. Rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a review, please. Reviews mean a lot. Whichever podcast platform you're using to listen, please subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And the best part is that it's free. Learn about myself and the Tristen Law Show by typing TristenLawShow.com in your internet-enabled device for more info. I'll be waiting for you next week. I am Tristen Law. This is the Tristen Law Show. And until next time, adios.